Allie with the Potomac Bead Company, and today I'm going to show you a very simple idea that you probably have done when you were a child, and they're really in fashion right now, layering them and doing these simple beaded macrame slip knot bracelets. To do these, we're going to use a number of different materials, and the nice thing is you really can use a variety of beads of your choice. So you don't have to have the exact same beads that I'm going to be using in this bracelet. This is also a great thing to learn and to teach this slip knot in that macrame style. If you do want a more detailed version of the macrame style, we have another video that you can search for on our page for doing the macrame. So the simpleness of this bracelet is just going to be loading on the beads and kind of creating a pattern. And then, like I said, a lot of times they get layered. These are also a great gift idea, for teens and for younger adults as well. So keep in mind, if you are looking for gift ideas, this is a great one to do. If you do want to make these bracelets with me, you'll need a couple different materials. Below the video, in the publish date that says when the video was produced, below that little box, there's a down arrow or a show more button. You can click on that and we'll give you links to some of the different products that are used in this project. The project itself is strung on knotted cord, which is a Chinese knotting cord, and I'm using the 0.8 millimeter knotting cord in the dark brown color. That's going to allow me to use a variety of beads because it's nice and thin. If you do want to use a leather, you'd want to use a 0.5 leather. The only caution is that when you use the leather and that thin, the leather can snap. You can also use 1 millimeter leather if you'd like to do so, and just keep in mind that you will need some larger beads for the whole size. Your beads are going to need to be big enough that they fit through the knotting cord. That's why I like the 0.8 in the knotted. For beads going on here, I have set out some Matubo beads in 6/0 and 8/0. You can see the size difference here. So the 6/0s are here in the middle, and then the 8/0s are on the ends. I also threw in, because they have a larger hole, some of the new demi-round beads. So the Matubos I have here in some metallic colors, and then I also grabbed the demi-round beads, and this is the metallic gold color in the 8/0 demi-round, which the demi-round is the Toho seed bead. I have it here in the bronze color as well. So you can see they have a nice big hole that you can add to. Another idea, you could add some O beads. If you have O beads, will fit nicely on. If you're using a different brand of seed beads, Miyuki and Toho 8/0 seed beads and above will fit on this 0.8 knotted cord. So you can use size 8, size 6s, any of the O beads, and try a variety of them as well. Also, some gemstones you will be able to get on this cord, so it's just a little bit of experimentation what you want to do. The whole cording is not covered by beads, but that's up to you. You can go longer or shorter with this middle section. I have about 2 inches of beads here in the middle section, and you can change that up. So the number of beads that you need for the project is going to be determined by the number of beads you want on the bracelet. Also, you want to keep in mind you want at least 1 bead for each end of the bracelet, or you can do a simple knot, but the beads actually look nice since the cording hangs down. Also, in addition to the knotted cord and your beads, you do want to have some super glue or super glue. We are going to use this at the very ends of the project in order to make it more stiff and like a needle and prevent fraying, to make it easier to put your beads onto the end. Also, we'll use it as we do the slip cord and the slip knot, just at the very tip and the very end of the slip cord. Because we are using the knotted cord, I have a pair of scissors here. These are the snip and slip scissors that kind of go inside of one another. They have a really nice sharp edge, and I'll use that to help cut the knotting cord and also cut off the super glue ends when we get to the very end. You can also use a thread zap or a thread burner for the ends of the knotted cord. I would suggest, if you are using a burner or a thread zap ultra or a cord cutter, keep a different one for thread than you use for any of the Chinese knotting cord or doing any of the macrame, because it does get a little bit of gunk on the tip. Or get a second tip and change it out and just mark with a little piece of paper or Sharpie marker or a little label what the different tips are for. I also have a nice workable surface that I'm working with to make it easy. If you are a perfectionist, you may want a ruler handy as well in order to know how much of your knotting cord you are going to use, so that way you don't waste a lot of it. To get started, I'm going to cut the knotting cord and then show you how we're going to glue the ends before we start in our design. So the first step that you want to do is cut your first piece of knotting cord. We'll be using a second piece when we get to the actual macrame portion for that slide slip knot. So when we get to that slip knot portion where you can make it bigger and smaller, you're going to be using a second piece of your cord. So to start out, you want about 14 inches of your knotting cord cut off the spool. You're then going to take your super glue, or in this case the super new glue, which is a fast drying glue, and I'm going to glue the ends of the cord. What this is going to do is make it a lot easier for me to thread the beads onto the cording, and it also keeps it from fraying or pulling back a little bit. So you can see I put a lot on one because it came out that way, and I'm just kind of rubbing it on the other side to create that nice stiff end. That nice stiff end, then you'll let it dry for a minute or two, and then once it's dry, we're going to be adding our beads. After it's dry, and when we're done the project, it's actually going to get cut off. So you don't have to worry about that stiff end. I usually use about 1/4 of an inch that I glue onto the project. If you have extra glue that you get onto it, rather than having that ball of glue, which is going to make the end bigger, you can have just a piece of paper or something that you can blot it right nearby. So I'm going to let this cording dry a little bit, and then I'll measure to the middle in order to get ready to add my beads onto the end. Once you have your ends glued, we're going to go ahead and lay out some of the beads that we want to use in the design. Again, the beads that you use, you're just going to test to make sure that they fit on the cording. I'm using the 6/0 seed beads in that Matubo, which have a nice kind of tubular look and a nice big opening. These are the Aztec gold or the flax color, and then the red copper color. I also have the demi rounds in the 8/0 size. The 11/0 demi rounds will not fit on this cording, so you want to use the 8/0s or even O beads for that. And I have those in the 24 karat gold just to add a little bit of brightness. If you are doing these as a gift, I would recommend doing 3 or so to give as a nice present, that they will be stackable and interchangeable, that you can wear them together or separately. Once you have the cording actually nice and stiff here at the end, it's going to work as a needle to help in the design. You're going to fold that 14 inches of thread in half and determine where you want the beads to go in the middle of the bracelet. So in this case here, I'm holding about 3 inches of cording, that when I open it up here, I have about 3 inches. I'm going to do 3 inches, whereas I had 2 inches on the original one. I'm going to do a couple more beads on this design here. What I'm going to do then is take the end of the thread here, where that 3 inches is, hold the end of the cording and do a simple overhand knot, pulling that tightly then, and that'll stop the beads from falling off that original cording. The reason that I'm tying the knot is because it's going to be easier if the beads are stuck in place, so that way when you are doing this slip knot, you can easily take it off and on without the beads going around the bracelet. Also, to actually tie the slip knot, the beads are not going to get in the way. You don't have to tie the knots, that's optional and up to you, but I like how it keeps them towards the center. Once you tie the knot, you're going to actually start designing. So you can do this ahead of time if you want, and design which beads you want and which color order. I like to just kind of do it as I'm creating, adding on the beads just one at a time, and using the beads to kind of accentuate the cording. So the cording comes in a number of different colors. You can go with white, you can go with dark brown, and really just playing around with the design. Doing it a very kind of organized pattern. I always say it's that nice pattern organization, is it's not a pattern, but it's organized so that way the colors go nicely together. So I'm just going to keep loading the beads on in whatever order I want the whole way down to that knot, and then once I have my 3 inches that I had measured out originally of beads, I'll go ahead and tie my second knot after I have all the beads on. So once you get all of your beads onto your simple knotted cord, you're going to tie knot after the beads. If you want to do this tightly, the beads will not move around. You can see in the example, I let them spin and move around just ever so slightly. All the jewelry that I wear, I tend to wear on my wrist and then kind of play with, so I want them to be able to move, and I don't want it too tight that they look rigid and stiff. So you're simply going to tie an overhand knot at the end of your beads here. And I'm going to have that be flexible tie that knot. And then what you're going to do to actually increase and kind of stretch it up ahead of time is pull that knotted cord, because it does have a tiny bit of elasticity to it, and pull that knotting cord, and that's going to allow your beads to kind of float around the middle of the bracelet there. So on my design, just for your reference, I did one of each color, then 5, 10, 5, and then one of each color again, separating out those sections with 1 or 2 of my spacer beads. Once you're done the central part of the design, we are going to be crossing the threads over one another in the middle of the design. So you're going to have one thread basically going on top of each side, and that's how we're going to do the slip knot. To determine how much thread you need on each side and where you're going to add your extra beads, you need it to fit over the thickest part of the wrist. It's usually a good idea to kind of measure that out, but if you have a 10-inch opening, so if you have at least 10 inches, it should be able to get over most wrist sizes. I have a smaller wrist and I don't like a ton of extra thread hanging down, so usually I do mine shorter. When you have the design that you're looking for and the length that you're looking for, so I have about 10 inches of cording, which is going to kind of go to the back, it's going to be pulled then, those cords, so that's going to allow that area to get bigger. Once you have it on, then you'll pull both sides and that'll tighten up and those cords will hang down. Once I know exactly how much extra I want on the bracelet, I'll grab one end here, just do a simple overhand knot, give a nice tight pull, kind of measure up on the other side or eye it up, do the same thing on the other side. You can also lay it along the ruler if you want, and when you lay it along the ruler, then you know that your knots are exactly the same distance. As you know, if you watch my videos, I kind of just eyeball. I don't go for perfection. All right, once you have your 2 knots on the sides, we're going to add our beads that hang out at the very end of the knot. So I just left some beads out here with the little demi-rounds. And these demi-rounds, because they do have that gold coating on them, they tend to have a little bit smaller of a hole than a lot of the other demi-rounds. So be persistent, you will get them on. So I just have the demi-round, the gold, and then another demi-round bead. And once I have this on one end, then what I will do is tie a simple knot after. And depending on how far you want that knot, that's going to determine kind of what little ending you want. Again, I like to keep it nice and organic looking with the knotted cord, and I don't trim off right to the end of the knot. I usually just leave that little bit of cording so I can see it and hanging out. If you do have the end of your demi-round there kind of getting stuck, you can usually trim down the end of the cording just a tiny bit and have that there. Once I have those beads on them, I'm going to do the knot after it. And then flip over and do the same thing on the other side. So I have the beads there just kind of hanging out. Go over to this other side, add the beads as well. Once you have both beads on either of your end, we're going to get ready to do that macrame slip knot in the middle. To do so, I'm going to use a new piece of my knotted cord, about 10 inches, and we'll get ready to start that process. So here at the end then, so I don't have as much cording hanging out, I'm just going to go ahead and trim this down. Because I did nice tight pulls also, I don't have to worry about this cord coming apart. If you're a person that likes to glue, you can just take a little toothpick if you want, or a little reamer, and drop a tiny bit of glue onto that knot. That's up to you. I don't worry about it because it'll fray a little bit. The other thing, like I said, the cording, you can take your threads up and actually burn down the cording a little bit, which will ball that up as well. If it frays, I think it kind of adds to the organic look for it. So that extra piece of cording, again, we're going to do that macrame knot. To do so, I'm going to fold that bracelet like we had it, so the ends are folded one over top of the other. When you're looking at this, you're going to have one side of your bracelet that's going to stay towards the left, and then one side that's going to stay to the right. The nicer you can keep that cording flat, the nicer that macrame knot is going to be. I'm going to take the cording, fold it in half, having the ends equal one another, and then I'm simply going to tie it onto those 2 cords. So new piece of thread is just getting tied in a simple knot and making sure that those thread ends match in length. After a simple overhand knot, that is going to establish which thread is on the left and which side thread is on the right. From here, you can pull that cording down a little bit. It's kind of up to you. One of the threads for the cording, I'm going to take to the right-hand side. One of the threads is going to be on the left, and the two center cordings will run down the middle. Again, if you need a more detailed version of this macrame knot, you can check out the other video, which is specifically to teach just this knot. I'm going to make what I call a Snoopy nose. It's the easiest way to teach. It's an easy way to teach kids too. So the cord that's on the right is going to cross over the two center cords in the middle. That cord on the right, that's what I say, is kind of looks like Snoopy's nose. The cord on the left is going to come over the top of the right-hand cord, crossing over. Once it crosses over the cord from the right, it's going to tuck underneath the two central cords, come through that Snoopy nose, and I'm going to pull that cording nice and tight. From here, you're going to alternate which sides you're going and doing that initial Snoopy nose. So this time I'm going to go to the left, crossing that cording on the left over those two central cords. The cording on the right is going to go over top of the cording that was on the left, and then it's going to tuck underneath that cording and come through that loop. Give a nice tight pull. If you forget which side you are on, whatever side has that little bump is the side that is going to be the Snoopy nose. Whatever side the cording is coming out and kind of popping out the top, you know that's the one that you just completed. So you're going to continue doing these knots right along the end of the bracelet. What this is going to do is create that slip knot that the cording below is going to move between. You can do this with hemp cording, you can do this with leather. The knotted cord has a really great grip to it, so it makes it that a lot of times with slip knots they can kind of come loose. The knotted cord holds the knot really well. So I have that little ball there on the right hand side, and I know I'm going to start with the right, doing that Snoopy nose, taking the cord on the left, crossing over the cord from the right, and then tucking underneath the three cords and out through the middle. If you would continue to do it on one side rather than switching sides, you're going to get a spiraling effect, which for this point and purpose you do not want. So I'm just going to continue and show you guys that square knot. So you're making and alternating sides and pulling it through. You'll start to see a nice zigzag section happening. And if you don't see that zigzag and the alternating of the little side knots there, then you'll know that you did the same side. And you can easily take this out. If you have a size 10 needle handy, it's easy to kind of grip onto it, take that knot out and start over. So I'm going to continue this for a full inch since this bracelet is a little bit bigger. Here's about 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to continue this, and you'll have enough in your cording to do a full 1.5 inches. I always like to have extra cording rather than not enough. So continue doing this knotting section here on the macrame knot in order to increase that look for that slip knot. So once you are done with your inch or so of that little macrame knot, you can go ahead and check out the ends and see that those little ends that are left, I could continue with those. I'm going to cut them off. So when I lay the bracelet down, you want to make sure that that little macrame section is in the middle. It will slide, and I also even slide it together a little bit before I finish it up because I want to make sure that it's nice and tight. Also, if you want to, as you get better at this, you can actually wait to add your end beads until you are finished, so that way you make sure you get them exactly the distance that you want them to be. Once you have that macrame knot created, and the longer the knot, it's just for more stylistic purposes. Usually when you get to about 1/2 inch, you're not going to have it be more durable or less durable for pulling and for holding the actual bracelet in place. So anything more than 1/2 inch is really just going to be for the look of it. When you have the end here, what I like to do is either get a little toothpick or a little reamer. And in this case here, I'm just going to use my scissor tip. I put a little bit of the glue onto the end of the tip of something because I don't want any of the glue along those central lines. If you glue the central lines there, it won't pull. So I have a little bit of glue sitting on the pliers here, and what I'm going to do is glue the last two little knots right along the end. I'm not going to worry too much about that starting side because it's just a knot. I'm just using it to get it off the pliers. So toothpick works really well. Once I have that little glue there, I just have it as an added security. You can also, if you want to, then trim down the ends of your thread. And then again, with that cording, if you would like, you can either take that super glue again and just kind of press it on the end of the actual cording, or you can take your thread ends here, heat it up a tiny bit, and burn them down a little bit as well. When you burn them down, they'll get a little bit gummy and kind of ball up a little tiny bit. But once you're completely done with this design, then you have the bracelets completed. Again, they look good as a set, and you can kind of give them. The other thing that looks nice, which you can do, is if you add a little charm to the end over the two cordings when you cross them over before doing the slip knot, it'll move around the end as well there, so you could add a little charm in as well. This is also a great way to use up some extra beads if you have extra beads and you really don't need that many beads for the design. Again, if you need any of the materials to do these fun little bracelets, you can go back to the beginning of the video where I listed out the materials, or below the video to that show more button. Also, if you would like to, you can subscribe to this YouTube channel. When you subscribe to the YouTube channel, you get regular updates of new designs, new ideas, new things going on in the beading world. You can also shop with me at PotomacBeads.com and stay connected with us on Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest. Also in Facebook, you can join our group for beading and jewelry making. It's a great community of individuals that love to make things and are super nice and happy to give ideas and share ideas and offer inspiration. So check that out as well. Ask to become a member there, and we will preview and you can join in the conversation. As always, thank you so much for watching, and have fun making these little simple stackable bracelets.